れはね、逃げ惑う人の内臓を全部引きずり出しちゃうこと。
行くよムツキ君、見ていろひよっこども、ついでに下口上等、佐々木の本気を見せてやれ。
We gotta talk about Tokyo Ghoul. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Naro, and disappointment is what my parents called me as a child. A lot. Disappointment is also what you call the anime Tokyo Ghoul. Well, I mean, it didn't start that way. You see, Tokyo Ghoul came out in 2014, and even though it's been over a decade, if you're a new anime fan, chances are you've probably heard of it. And that's solely because of the first season. That first season's considered, in my eyes, as well as many others, absolutely phenomenal. But unfortunately, I can't recommend that you watch it. Or at least watch all of it. Also, spoiler warning from here on out, because I'm going to be talking about many major points in the story during this video. So yeah, like I said, I can't recommend this anime to you, and that's because even though you get to watch 1.5 seasons of great anime, you'll then have to watch the abomination that is Tokyo Ghoul Re.
Stop protecting the ghouls. Do it again, and you'll get another motto punch to the gut.
This is the third and final installment in the series, and to be honest, I don't think disappointment is the right word to justify what this season alone did to the entire show. I mean, I think this honestly has to be the worst fall off an anime's ever had. Like Shield Hero and The Promised Neverland don't even come close to this. Like, I don't know if I was the only one who did this, but while watching the first couple of episodes of Re, I was caught so off guard and trying to cope so hard that I thought Re was doing this incredibly secret writing thing where once Kaneki got his memories back, the entire show would shift from being complete shit back to the way it was during the first season. And yeah, that shit did not happen. But somehow, by the grace of God, despite that utterly tragic third season, the anime's reputation actually managed to stay pretty strong to this day. But there's actually a few reasons for that aside from just the first season. But first, we have to understand what exactly made that first season so great, and that last season so damn bad. So let's start off by talking about the obvious thing that we can see that's drastically different. Like literally, I'm talking about the animation. This first season's anime comes out the gate swinging, and it immediately sets the tone for this show as a very dark and gritty story, while beautifully blending psychological and horror with lighter elements. And just that animation alone had me hooked within the first episode. That's also because I personally love the art style of this season, since it gives off a similar vibe to other really good psychological animes. But that's not all that helped create that tone, because along with really good animation, the soundtrack and sound effects really helped immerse me into that eerie, dark world. And that tone, though dropping a few notches, manages to still carry over to the second season. But then we have Tokyo Ghoul Re, and my god, I don't know what on earth compelled them to do this, but they managed to find a way to suck all of the emotion out of the entire show with just the animation. Like, that's not a joke. It's actually kind of impressive how bad it is. Like, just look at these character downgrades. My eyes! My eyes! Even with the psychological scenes, which there's only like 3 in 24 episodes. But still, all 3 found a way to make me feel absolutely nothing while watching them. And you might be thinking,
oh, well, if the psychological parts drops, then they must have at least buffed up the action parts, right?
No. No, not even close.
See, I don't take orders from you!
If that vessel still holds some fragment of your soul.
And what's even worse is I can't even give them the benefit of the doubt, because all 3 seasons were done by the same animation studio. But even though the animation and soundtrack are very important, and for me, personally the biggest reason why Re was so bad, there's still one big factor that helped set Re's reputation in stone, and that's the story. But before I go ahead and break all that down, let me just go ahead and glaze the first season's story real quick. What makes Tokyo Ghoul's first season so amazing is that it does a great job of introducing and teaching you this world by seeing it through the eyes of Kaneki, who, like you, is also learning about this ghoulish world that he's been thrown into. And with the fact that Kaneki is just an average boy who's living a regular, mundane, and for the most part, peaceful life, that just makes those psychological and horror elements hit that much more. But though it's scary, story, the more challenges Kaneki overcomes, the more he starts to learn that ghouls are not so different from humans. And that belief helps drive this entire story, as well as many of the relationships that Kaneki ends up making. Especially with Toka, who lives in the world of ghouls, and with Amin, who lives in the world of humans. And another thing that's great about this first season is that it has a very grounded feel to it, since we're not being introduced to too many characters, unlike Ri that needs you to remember like 700 different people. And on top of that, most of the first season takes place in a coffee shop. And so those things help make the story feel like it's only focusing on one storyline, rather than having multiple going and just overwhelming the hell out of all of us. And also, since we're learning this world through Kaneki, we're not learning everything immediately, but instead we're slowly uncovering the secrets to what's really happening with this story behind the scenes. Which, yeah, there's some f***ed up shit going on behind that curtain. But still, with the combination of this story, plus great animation and soundtracks that helped bring this story to life the right way, it's no surprise to me that this season alone is considered peak by most people. Now, if you watched every season and had to guess which of the seasons was altered from the manga, you'd probably bet your entire life's fortune that it was Ri. And you would lose everything because it was actually the second season, Tokyo Ghoul Route A. Route A isn't really that bad, is what I thought before learning that it actually isn't canon. But still, at the time, I still found it enjoyable, even though it definitely wasn't as good as the first season. And it did give us the most iconic scene in the anime that definitely didn't happen in the manga. But then when I found out what actually does happen in the manga, and yeah, they should have just stuck with the source material because it makes way more sense. Because even though they ended Route A's season in a way where it still could have technically been canon, since they kept all the major plot points that happened in the manga the same, the things that they altered or just flat out erased were way too damn important to the story. Like, just to name a couple, in the manga, Kaneki going off on his own to form a group with Banjo makes way more sense over him joining Aogiri, because obviously both routes will help him grow stronger, but leaving with Aogiri keeps him further away from Anteku, making it harder to protect them, which is the whole reason why he wants to get stronger in the first place. And then there's the whole laboratory arc. I mean, I don't even know how you just decide to keep that out, because every show has a massive turning point in the story that ultimately connects everything. And that was the laboratory arc. That arc's literally the foundation of Tokyo Ghoul's story, and they just completely erased it. And after watching Route A again after knowing this, yeah, it became a lot easier to see that they were actually struggling with this season. Cause though it was solid during the action scenes and major parts, all the other moments were just way too slow and really took me out of it to the point where I just found it boring. So if you do end up committing to watching this entire series, I just suggest at least reading chapters 67 to 143 of the manga so that you're not completely confused going into Ri. But as I said earlier, I don't recommend that you watch Ri, because it's just a mess in every way possible. Obviously, I've already talked about the animation, but the overall feel of the story completely shifts to only what I can describe as a slightly darker version of My Hero Academia. And I don't hate My Hero, but that's just not what this show calls for. And after watching this show from start to finish, I don't hate the story and where it leads to, but I just think the execution was done very wrong, especially with Ri. Because while watching it, your two main catchphrases will be,
"Who the fuck is that?"
and
"Wait, when the hell did that happen?"
And that's because the anime adaptation completely skips over a ton of the source material, leaving so many gaps in between, which causes the character development to move way too fast or just not even happen because it wasn't shown. Which then causes even more confusion added onto the already existing confusion that many of the people who didn't even read the manga already had going from Route A to Ri. Like a good example is Corona, who we're introduced to along with her sister in Route A. And for the most part, Route A sticks to what pretty much happens to those sisters in the manga. And their storyline's pretty important to the overall story since it's tied in with the laboratory arc. But remember that they show none of that. So this is the last time we see them, and then we don't see them again until like 20 episodes episodes later, and wait, she's got 2 ghoul eyes now? Well, what happened to her sister? Oh dear god, she's in her stomach? So yeah, they literally skipped over everything. So when all the emotional moments follow after that, yeah, I don't feel the slightest bit of anything because there was 0 context to be given. And that lack of context ultimately makes every other scene that's supposed to make you feel something, like Kaneki and Toka's entire romance, as well as even Kaneki and Hide's reunion, and instead it ends up just making you feel meh about it. Then I feel like as the world opened up, it started to stray from what it needed to be, which it should have just stayed as grounded as it could, while having those psychological and horror elements still be just as strong and present as they were in the first season. Obviously that's a lot harder to do now that Kaneki has understood the world of ghouls a lot more, since a lot of that first season's tone came from his POV. But it still would have been possible since Kaneki wasn't the only person going through stuff. Also, what I said while talking about Rude, the adaptation just confuses and overwhelms us even more with the fact that we had to learn way too many characters and way more storylines. And I guess we were just left to figure out what happened on our own because the adaptation doesn't give us context for a lot of them since it continues to skip over the source material left and right. Hence the catchphrases. And then finally we have the ending. And look, I am all for a fairy tale happy ending, but that ending just doesn't feel right to me. I was always on board with the story ending with ghouls and humans finding peace together, but I know for a fact that I didn't see it getting to that point in the way it did. Since I know me and they're my thoughts, so obviously I would know that for a fact, because it's me. Anyways, I definitely thought it would end in a similar way to Attack on Titan, where, though they reached a happy ending, it was far more bittersweet, and it would have had a lot more pain attached to finally achieving that peace. But Tokyo Ghoul's ending had none of that. And so like me, many people came out of Re with just one emotion. Disappointment. Now, who's to blame for Re's catastrophic season? Well, clearly it's absolutely the studio that adapted it, because after watching Re again, had the studio kept the previous animation style and tone, as well as kept all the source material in by adding another 12 to 24 episodes, then yeah, I think I would have felt a lot better about plenty of the moments that happened during Re. But there's also the slight possibility that the author of Tokyo Ghoul's manga is also to blame. Because at the end of the day, I've never read the Tokyo Ghoul Re manga. I only read the chapters that happened during Rude. So I don't know if the moments in the anime make me feel nothing because it's a bad adaptation, or if the manga also failed to give any emotion as well. Something tells me that it wasn't the manga writer's fault, it was probably definitely only solely the adaptation's fault. But still, if anyone watching this has actually read the manga fully through, then let me know in the comments if the manga does a way better job of doing Tokyo Ghoul's story justice and is worth reading or not. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.